person with Alzheimer's might not be, it's not that they can't find their keys. They might not remember what the keys are for, or they put the keys in a strange place, like the refrigerator. We might put our keys down on the counter or by the door, but, a person with Alzheimer's could put them in a strange place and have no recollection of where they are. So our education programs help caregivers really understand the disease so that the caregiver can be strong and not get upset when these things happen and know that it's normal, and not to try and convince the person to put their keys in the same place every day, because that ship has left,
Right. So we're going to have a little break right now, Ilene. I want to, at this point, I have to tell my listeners, in case they're just tuning in, and not to cut you off, you can continue, but we're at the halfway mark. I know time goes by fast. In case you're just tuning in, you're listening to Partners in Health and Biz. The topic this morning, get the facts about Alzheimer's disease, with my special guest, Ilene Rosenthal. We're going to have a little PSA here, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. If you want to grab some water, you have about 30 seconds, and we'll be right back.
Flowers are beautiful things, but they become even more beautiful when they're carried by people who are committed to ending Alzheimer's, a disease that currently has no cure. At the Alzheimer's Association Walk to End Alzheimer's, hundreds of thousands walk, carrying different colored flowers signifying their connections to the disease. And we walk so that one day there will be a white flower for Alzheimer's first survivor. Register today at alz.org/walk.
Welcome back. You're listening to Partners in Health and Biz. I'm your host, Gail Dixon. The topic, get the facts about Alzheimer's disease. And I'm here with my special guest, Ilene Rosenthal, and she is one of the directors at the Alzheimer's Association for the state of Maryland. And so, Ilene, I know you were I think you were almost at the end of letting us know about the different services that the Alzheimer's Association provides. They're wonderful services, and you gave out the 24-hour helpline, which if you're just tuning in, the 24-hour helpline for the Alzheimer's Association is 1-800-272-3900. Is that correct, Ilene?
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
So there are other services, Gail, so people can find out about those services, including care consultations, early stage programs, safety. We even help connect people with clinical trials. We have something called Trial Match. And then, of course, our website has great information on it, alz.org.
Right. So if you want to know about all the services, just visit the website, alz.org. So, Ilene, where are we? This is so important, critical to everyone in the United States, whether we're, aging or we know someone who is aging and could possibly eventually come, be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Where are we with funding for Alzheimer's research?
So nationally, it's the National Institutes of Health in the federal government that has the budget for Alzheimer's research, and that budget is currently $1.9 billion. Just 5 years ago, it was slightly over $500 million, so the amount has almost quadrupled in this time. And as far as fiscal year 2019 is concerned, both the House and the Senate budget committees have approved at least a $400 million increase for fiscal year 19, which would bring the total to $2.3 billion. And this is just amazing. It's great. It's not enough, but it's finally getting the recognition it deserves. When you think about 5 years ago, it was just $500 million in research. Now, as the world's largest nonprofit funder of Alzheimer's research, the Alzheimer's Association is committed to accelerating the global effort to eliminate Alzheimer's and also funds research. Currently, the association is investing in over $110 million in nearly 400 best-of-field active projects in 19 countries. We also convene an international research conference every year that brings about 5,000 or 6,000 researchers in from all over the globe, and they're sharing information. And so again, we're the largest nonprofit funder of research in the country and globally. And in fact, to date, we've invested over $400 million in research projects, some of which would not have been considered fundable by the federal government, but we were able to take some risks. A good example of that is the imaging studies, the dye that's used that lights up the pathology in the brain. That was something that was initially funded by the Alzheimer's Association about 15 years ago.
Okay, wonderful. At least we are progressing, and so what kinds of things are you hoping to accomplish at the federal and state level going forward?
Well, worldwide, there is a huge quest to just find new treatments to stop, slow, or even prevent Alzheimer's disease. Drugs in development are trying to interrupt the disease process by impacting on one or more of the brain changes associated with Alzheimer's. Until recently, most of the clinical trials have tested potential therapies in people living with the disease. But right now, the consensus in the field is a need to move treatment interventions earlier and research studies earlier in the course of the disease in order to have the most beneficial impact. So Alzheimer's prevention studies are probably the most exciting research right now, and that's testing to see if we can intervene with people at high risk of Alzheimer's. Not people who have a diagnosis, but people who are believed to be high risk of going on to get it, to see if we can change the course of the disease. Now that we have the imaging technology that allows us to see the disease in the brain of a living person, it's really changed the whole focus of research. The other big thing we are looking at, and there was some very exciting news that came out of our international research conference this summer, is just looking at lifestyle and the associated risks for cognitive decline. So for the first time, a large randomized clinical trial has demonstrated a significant reduction in the risk for developing mild cognitive impairment and dementia through aggressive treatment of high blood pressure. So those of you who are dealing with high blood pressure, get on it, treat it, make your blood pressure go down. The research was so compelling because historically we've considered people with a systolic of 140 or over to be people with high blood pressure that we would begin treatment for. In the study, they treated people who had a systolic of 120 or over, and the results were so compelling in terms of reducing their risk of cognitive decline and even beginning to reverse some early signs that they stopped the study because they thought it was unethical to withhold treatment to the people who weren't getting the more aggressive treatment. So I would suspect that over the near future, there could be some redefining in the medical guidelines of when to start treating high blood pressure, which would be a really good thing in terms of reducing people's risk. And then I also just wanted to mention one more time, that if anybody's interested in clinical trials, they can go to the association and get information and create a profile for TrialMatch, because as we're getting more money for research, the next big hurdle is getting people to participate in research. So that becomes even more important. So with TrialMatch, they fill out a profile, and then we contact them and let them know about clinical trials in their area that are looking for people like them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's very important, especially with the high blood pressure. I'm aware of that. I know as the high blood pressure increases, of course, a person's risk for stroke would increase, and also that if they do have a stroke, that would interfere with different brain cells, and also that will weaken the brain. So
exactly.
I know you have, understand that there is some very exciting things happening, and you have a walk to end Alzheimer's coming up in Howard County. So could you tell us more about that?
Yes, thank you for asking, Gail. So the Howard County Walk is one of 6 walks organized by the Greater Maryland chapter, and it's one of more than 600 walks nationwide. Walk to End Alzheimer's is our largest event to raise awareness and funds for all Alzheimer's care and support and research. So the Howard County Walk will be held on September 22nd at Centennial Park. And every registration is at 9 o'clock, and the walk begins at 10. And it's not too late to register to walk or to start a walk team, or even if you want to come out and volunteer, we need you. So just give us a call. We'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing there.
Oh, wonderful. Absolutely. That's a great way for people to get involved and raise money. And because, like I said, just about everyone knows someone who has Alzheimer's. And as we age, you have to consider yourself. So you want to get out and help us to help the association raise money and awareness of what can be done. So what advice do you have, Ilene, for family caregivers who are dealing with this disease? Because there's so many people that are, I know you had given some advice earlier, but could you quickly give us some advice for family caregivers as they're dealing with this disease?
Sure. Again, I just want to remind people to keep that 800 helpline number handy, 800-272-3900. We have live dementia experts available 24 hours a day, and they can answer a very wide variety of questions. So just keep that handy. But in addition to that, I would strongly encourage caregivers to become educated about the disease, go to an educational program where you can learn more about it, how it changes, and how to manage the challenging behaviors, even how to communicate with someone who's lost their ability to use their words to communicate, because they're still communicating even if they're not talking. They're communicating, and it's a special skill to understand what they're trying to tell you. Support groups, again, very, very helpful. And then for newly diagnosed people, I would say stay active, stay engaged in community life, get involved in an early stage program somewhere. And we have some really exciting new innovative early stage programs, including a monthly program at the zoo called Walk on the Wild Side, where once a month a trained zoo employee takes individuals on a tour. Last month they spent a lot of time with the penguins. They even got to touch the penguins. It was really cool. The Walters Art Museum has a specially trained docent who leads a monthly tour of the Walters Art Museum. We have some specialized fitness classes. There's a local gym that has some programs. There are also memory cafes, and this is strictly social. It's a place where people can go with their care partner and just be comfortable, be around other people who are going through what they're going through, and not be embarrassed if they forget somebody's name 3 times in a row. It's all just a very welcoming atmosphere. So I would just say get involved, look at the services, even go online, look at alz.org. We even have an online community called Alz Connected, where people sometimes will just post a question, and then 10 people will answer and say, well, this is how I dealt with that. So there's lots and lots of good information online as well.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I know when you were sharing about how to communicate if your loved one has the disease and is repeating themselves. I remember my grandmother used to always say, I have to go home and I'm ready to go home. Of course, she was already home, and we did not know that you shouldn't. So we were like, oh, no, you're already home. So now you're saying, okay, you're letting us know, my listeners, that really you should agree with them so that it doesn't upset them. So you have shared so much wonderful, powerful information this morning, Ilene. I do want to thank you, and I want to see if you can come back in the near future and share with us. Don't be a stranger, because I know there's always something new coming, happening with the Alzheimer's Association. So we want to keep updated with what's going on with the association. So as we begin to close out, any final remarks that you would like to leave with our listeners?
Well, I would
Ilene?
just like to say anybody who's interested in getting involved with the association, we'd love to have you. We have lots of opportunities. We always need volunteers for however long, whether you have a once-a-week time slot open or once a year if you want to come out and help us with a special event like the walk, or even if you want to be trained to deliver community education. We have a lot of volunteers who've been trained and are out teaching in families